distinguished panel, and ladies and gentlemen. The topic I have selected, actually we have selected, is transition of accordance, the next step of India-Sri Lanka economic strategy. My topic is about economic strategy, it is true, but by this, actually through this research, I have majorly focused on the most important agreement which we are about to sign, ECTA, Economic and Technological Cooperation Agreement. Considering about the past agreements and the economic relationship India and Sri Lanka had so far, the economic agreement, the first economic agreement India and Sri Lanka has signed is on December 28, 1998. It was also known as India-Sri Lanka Free Trade Agreement. Considering all the agreements we have signed, we can see that the intention and the interest of both countries are going in independent ways. It's not the same interest. They have separate interest. And the previous government did not have much intention of entering into any sort of agreement with India. But the present Sri Lankan government has the eager with the foreign policy principle of neighborhood first, and Indian government with the foreign policy principle of sabse bada rupaya. The most important thing is the rupee. With this theme, both countries has agreed into entering into the new economic partnership, which is ECTA. ECTA is not a new thing. It is the next step of India-Sri Lanka economic relationships. Considering the framework, we can see that it has the resemblance of previous agreements. So far, ECTA has no shape and no form. But the drafted agreement is already formed and it has been presented to Indian government in year 2015. The research was conducted to analyze whether the proposed content of ECTA is favorable to Sri Lankan economy or not, and which ways it is going to be favorable. We have done this research by interviewing experts in economy, diplomats, and by using previously analyzed data. As I have mentioned earlier, ECTA is not a new thing or a new agreement. After India-Sri Lanka Free Trade Agreement, both countries, Sri Lanka and India, decided to expand trade beyond goods. Then the SEPA came, Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. With this, the trade has expanded to goods, services, economic cooperation, and investments. Through the SEPA, both countries agreed to reduce traffic to 0% for items removed from the negative list. But SEPA did not sign because of the change of the government. Through this slide, you can see that the benefit variation of imports and export within Sri Lanka and India. We can see that India is always above the margin of a justifiable margin, and Sri Lanka is always below the justifiable margin. ECTA is not a detrimental agreement to Sri Lanka. It could be a succeeding arm of India-Sri Lanka previously agreements. It is a fact that the larger country is always getting the bigger and the larger advantage of any agreement. But Sri Lanka should work towards to make this situation a win-win. Considering about how to make the agreement the drafted agreement, ECTA, a win-win. Before moving to another step, Sri Lanka should have a clear agreement or a round of discussion with India about how non-traffic barriers should be fall down and how the both countries should work towards to reduce negative list. In drafting the ECTA agreement in Chapter 7, Section 5 in the drafted agreement, it is said that any future agreement shall be considered as a part of ECTA agreement. This sort of a clause would be very unfair for a small economy like Sri Lanka. Also, both countries should work towards to maintain a uniform duty rate. Especially, the Indian Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, has decided to pass a bill, GST bill, which is also known as Goods and Services Bill. If the Indian government get the chance to pass this bill, it will be a very good thing for Sri Lanka, because by this bill, India has decided to draw down all the other taxes Sri Lankan entrepreneurs and Sri Lankan manufacturers has to pay by entering to each and every state of India. Also, the technical cooperation chapter of ECTA drafted agreement deals with new inventions, the intellectual property and intellectual cooperation, exchange of technology. Sri Lanka has to be very strict. Sri Lanka has to have very strict conditions on moving this sort of clause, because it will be very unfair to have joint intellectual cooperation and sharing intellectual knowledge. Also, the opening about the opening Sri Lankan job market to India and getting new chances for Sri Lankan workers to work in Indian job market. India has 7% unemployed workers. There, it is equal to 370 lakhs of unemployed people. It is more than Sri Lankan population. Therefore, Sri Lanka should be very keen in opening Sri Lankan job market to India. Also, the agreement which is about to sign should be drafted according to international standards. That is the conclusion we came as about how we should amend ECTA agreement according to my analysis. These are my references. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.